In an instant, one person had already reached behind Jinzun, aiming at the flaw on his back. Meanwhile, the three siblings were still exploring the martial arts hall. They arrived in front of a staircase. Slowly walk up. Even 20 men couldn't harm Jinzun. What can the 8 of them do? Upon hearing this, everyone attacked simultaneously. But before Jinzun, they looked like mere toys. The few of them worked together quite well. The man said nothing more. He directly thrust a sword at him. But Jinzun caught the sword with his bare hand. The attacker used the momentum to dodge. Dania had no choice but to wait. Meanwhile, a final ultimatum had already been issued to Jinzun. Jinzun mocked them for not even having 36 men. What can they possibly do? But the sword gate wouldn't let him leave. Jinzun was fanning the flames nearby, asking Dania to pass along a message. The child is already in our hands. Upon hearing this, 3 people blocked Dania's way. The crowd instantly lost their hostility toward him, and instead asked where the Golden Sovereign's child was. Dania was puzzled. The Golden Sovereign had kidnapped their child, and he just wanted to escape with the child now. Just when Dania was worried about the increase in enemies, the opponents had already recognized him as a member of the Heavenly Dragon Gate. Dania raised his weapon high, to indicate that he was merely a hired warrior of the Heavenly Dragon Gate. Upon hearing this, he really likes Daniu. That's why he made him his subordinate. As Daniu hesitated on how to respond to this madman, several figures quickly approached. In an instant, they surrounded the 2 of them. The man wanted to create his own world, eliminating everything that stood in his way. Daniu was very skeptical of his words. The man smiled and said he was a golden lord. Nothing is impossible, and kept attacking him, but he was still easily thrown out. Then the man actually wanted Daniu to work for him. Daniu, to buy time for the kids, asked what benefits there would be. Daniel steadied himself, but the man attacked again. He realized they had too much in common, but now he had to stay away from the child. He pushed the man to the ground. He saw the children in the distance. He could only stop in his tracks. He turned back to attack. The man chasing him had his weapon seized and was flung away. The person follows as he thought. He closely follows behind. He needs to stay away from those children. Big Neo runs while thinking of a strategy, but he didn't run for long. If you meet such a person, you'd want to run away as fast as you can. But today, he really encountered that person. Seeing this, Daniel could only fight with all his might. Then he turned and ran in the opposite direction. You must keep your distance. If at any moment you feel bad when being hit, then absolutely never step into the martial world. Upon hearing this, Daniel just thought the master was joking, can only temporarily join forces against him. When Daniel saw the person in front of him, he suddenly remembered his master's words. When you encounter someone as strong as you, who enjoys being hit, they've transcended humanity. The battlefield was originally a war between the Sword Gate and the Dragon Gate. Suddenly, a bunch of monsters appeared. They attacked everyone they saw indiscriminately. Seeing this, both sides, the brothers kept her safe between them. The ones waiting here have already sensed their arrival. They appear to be human. They are human, but not human anymore. So she followed along. Meanwhile, someone in the distance was watching them. Unsure of what they were doing there, the 3 entered the valley, and because the sister was so scared, it was a test of courage, a challenge. As long as they bring back the wooden sword hidden inside, that's all that matters. Although the younger sister was afraid of the valley, she was more worried about her brother causing trouble. They can only target the 2 brothers. The sister will definitely follow. At this moment, the 3 siblings still don't know they are being plotted against. That night, the siblings truly arrived at the abandoned house. They agreed. Then someone thought of something. There's a closed martial arts school. They can act there. But the younger sister is too smart. It's impossible for her to be tricked. Inside the Tianlong martial arts school, 3 people are getting ready to teach the siblings a lesson. Just when all the adults in the meeting are not around. But the eldest son mentioned that the head of the family is in a competition. He doesn't want to be caught by his third uncle. But his own muscles are throbbing painfully. Looking at the man's manic expression, he seems to be enjoying it. Seeing the man's state, Dania suddenly remembers something, but was caught by Daniu. With the momentum, he was thrown out. The man looked at Daniu with a smile, indicating that he was ready for action. Daniu was clearly attacking the man. Daniu couldn't even knock the man over. As the man laughed loudly, Daniu stepped forward again. The 2 collided, leaving them bloodied and battered. The man charged at Daniu. Dania shouted for him to move aside, but it was too late. He was then kicked and sent flying. By now, Daniu had gotten behind the man, but his weapon was grabbed and he was pulled forward. Big Neo told him to go somewhere else. The man showed a terrifying smile. He rushed straight toward Xiaoming. At that moment, a warrior rushed out, but his sword was instantly broken. the man was instantly thrown into the air. Big Nyo turned and landed. He could only untie Xiaoming and leave him there. Then he drew his weapon and charged directly at the man. The sensation of the attack wasn't flesh at all. If he wanted to live, he should step aside. Upon hearing this, the big guy immediately moved aside. Seeing that the big guy was so perceptive, the man prepared to leave. But he unexpectedly headed towards where the others were hiding. The big guy hurriedly stopped him. Just as he was about to attack the enemy, the man stopped at the limit of attack distance. Seeing this, the big guy kicked out directly. The man just slid back a little. At this moment, the man opened his mouth to say that he was not an enemy. Dania used his expression to tell the other person to stay away. The man seemed to understand his meaning. As Dania nodded wildly, that person was already heading straight for him. Seeing this, Dania drew his weapon. Dania then tore off his sleeve and tied Xiaoming to himself. At that moment, a strange man appeared. Dania didn't know whether the person was friend or foe. He just hoped the person wouldn't come closer. The man looked at Dania with a smile on his face. Xiaoming agreed to Danio's request. After the group took a break, they continued on their way. But suddenly, the enemy's voices were heard. Danio quickly told everyone to hide. Then he instructed Xiaoming to hold onto him tightly like Xiaoshi does in the game. But he refused to share it with others. Because they said even dogs wouldn't eat their food. And it was thrown to the ground. So he would never give it to those people. Danio asked if he could share some with the warriors. It would take until next year if they walked. The brothers asked where to get horses. She looked at her brothers, speechless. He only hoped his father could return in good health. He was the only child with food. She told her brothers not to do anything foolish. But the brothers protested. They had already made up their minds. She couldn't stop them. She asked if they could ride horses. The children were also starting to show signs of fatigue. At this speed, they wouldn't escape here in days. In Danio's home, the two brothers were worried about their father. They wanted to go help their father. But at that moment, their sister stopped them. Danio asked if there were any others, but he was told that many had already scattered. Danio took out the token, indicating that he would command now. Then, the group set off, leaving this place. But their speed was truly too slow. The men's group was protecting the children from afar. After that, Danio followed him to the camp. Danio searched for Xiaoming among the children. At the same time, Xiaoming noticed Danio. After confirming the children were safe, it shouldn't be from a sword's lock. At that moment, a figure sprang out from the bushes nearby. Danio suddenly interrupted the arrow that came his way. He then realized it was someone from his sect. He then took out the token and asked about the children's whereabouts. The boy secretly saw this scene. Danio let the boy fall asleep. He picked up the boy and left the place. On the way, Danio recalled the child's previous injuries. There were no knife wounds. There was no way to save him. He wanted to ease the child's pain, but thought about whether he would do the same if it were his own child. In that moment of hesitation, he suppressed his rage, hoping that Xiaoming was not among them. At that moment, he heard a sound in the distance. He rushed forward to check. The child's injuries were very severe. He picked up the child and headed to where they got separated. Not far ahead, he saw corpses everywhere. He put a blindfold on the child. Then he went to see if anyone had survived. Anger made his muscles twitch all over. He worried it might be a trap. But still, he followed the sound. He saw the child wearing their sex robe. So, he went up and asked if they knew Xiaoming. After confirming it wasn't a trap. Among the children was someone Big Nyo saw as his son. Big Nyo originally intended to find a retreat route first, but enemies were everywhere. Then, he heard the sound of crying in the distance. There was a child on the battlefield, hoped to gain command near the children, and also wanted additional work allowances. Zhilong agreed to his request, and handed the token to Big Nyo, hoping that he would rescue all the children. Danio came here mainly to rescue the children first. Seeing Danio's firm resolve, Zhilong knew Danio wouldn't be easily swayed by him, so, he let him have his way for now. Upon hearing this, Big Nyo, it initially started as a small-scale conflict, but nearby sects are gradually getting involved. If this continues, it will turn into a full-scale war. They want to prevent that from happening. After all, war would only benefit other forces. She gifts him a BMW. At night, he arrives at the military room. He is informed that this incident originated from the Sword and Blade sect. They are the strongest forces of the Sword and Blade sect. Yet they have appeared in the territory of the Heavenly Dragon sect. He will take care of things at home. The man practiced for 2.5 years and finally became the security captain. On his first day in office, he was sent to the battlefield. He can only say goodbye to his family before heading to the front lines. As he departs, the heroine comes to see him off. He asks if the nanny's child is not going to Qing Tianxian. The nanny asks what happened. Danyo tells him not to worry. The nanny's child is his child. He will bring the child back safely. Danio stepped forward, confused. He was unexpectedly appointed as the team leader. Then he opened the command letter. He told everyone it seemed a war had broken out. Then he hurriedly ran back home. But then the assembly order sounded. Last time, it was when the child was kidnapped. I don't know what's so important this time. Everyone gathered, talking endlessly. Just then, an official came asking who Dania was. But the captain was taken down instantly. Then they started pursuing the rest. That day, Daniel brought the toad to the training ground, hoping he could train the samurai. Ajuan was responsible for guarding the 10th floor. They charged directly at the leader of the Tianlong Society's reconnaissance team. They urged everyone to scatter and escape. We must bring the information back to the association. Immediately, everyone stopped fighting. Spread out. Ajun instantly appeared in front of the frog. He expressed that he was very happy to see him. Then Ajun talked about his plan. Danyo said he could proceed according to his method. That night, the Tianlong Society's reconnaissance team was stopped by a group of people. The Heavenly Dragon Society has more than just the Heavenly Dragon. There is also a terrifying presence. They can only wait for an opportunity. At this time, the three brothers of the Big Ox met again. As soon as they met, the two started arguing. The Heavenly Dragon is 1/5. At this moment, the boy's father entered. He came in to ask what happened. After learning about the situation, he fell into deep thought. Then he told them not to act rashly. Then he sent his nephew to watch over his son. He needs to make a choice. At this moment, the twin heroes are entangled with the boy. The boy agreed to help them collect the brothers' offerings. But the boy stated he needed to think carefully about the plan. What he's considering is that his father hasn't decided on an heir yet. His father is the head of the 5 dragons. He knows all his sons are greedy. He's been watching their movements closely, but he's already feeling that his time is running out. The next day, the eldest son received a report. The Yen family's members were missing. Their important funding sources are all handled by the Yen family. But the eldest son is unwilling to get too involved. He lets his subordinates handle it. Before long, the two were already unconscious. Danio unexpectedly appeared here. Ajun looked at Danio, hesitating to act. He then told Danio to leave. But Danio still hoped to take responsibility himself. I hope the deputy hall master can remain silent. The head of the Yen family has already reached an agreement with Ajun. The underground wealth will be split 50-50. Then they arrived at the restaurant. They thought they had prepared the meal. Danio knew that Wolongdian wouldn't stand up for low-ranking warriors. Danio isn't here to let them confront openly. But if the other party wants to kill him, he will handle it himself. He will solve it in his own way. He handed the deputy shopkeeper a report. It was full of evidence of crimes committed by the eldest son's men. Danio originally wanted to find Zhilong, but Zhilong supports the eldest son, and Wolongdian Xiaohua is the third son's wife. The man's body is as strong as steel. Even the injections have to be specially made for him. He was supposed to be out on a mission, but secretly appeared at the association. He had something to tell the deputy shopkeeper. This place is a complete mess. At this moment, Ajun walks out from inside. The master inquires who he is. Ajun quickly bows and introduces himself. He is the new steward of Wangshi Tower. He told Danyo that the person who commissioned him to come here was from the Yen family. After hearing this, Danyo told him to go to Tianlong City to find Ajun first. The frog heard Ajun starting to complain that Danyo had abandoned everyone to be with Ajun. Meanwhile, the head of the Yen family was preparing to find some experts. The previous thugs had all been eliminated by Danyo and the others, and he came to Wangshi Tower. The man looked at Danyo in disbelief. The two turned around to see each other clearly. The man, like Ajun, was a former partner of Danyo. After Danyo left them, he started living wildly. Danyo recognized the man's martial arts skills. Then he shouted frog. The man paused upon hearing this. Danyo yelled for everyone to stop fighting. At that moment, the moonlight appeared, illuminating Danyo's face. But the man surprisingly used the turtle shell fist. The man actually jumped up like a frog. Danyo caught this move. The man used the turtle shell fist again. After the two parted ways, at that moment, the moon was obscured by dark clouds. Danyo and a few others walked out from the shadows. The man was surprised that they weren't knocked out. Immediately, the two groups charged at each other. Danyo caught the incoming attack. They took out fine wine from the stronghold and began to drink. Not long after, a flag rose above the stronghold. Seeing this from a distance, a few people put on masks and headed straight for the stronghold. But when they arrived, it was completely empty. He saw the leader and a few others kneeling in the distance. In a few moves, they subdued the enemy. These people were too weak. They didn't even need to step in, because it was too late. Everyone prepared to spend the night here. They were told the other side only had about 30 people. The more Danio listened, the more he felt something was off. But he still followed them to where the bandits were. They walked for a long time before reaching the stronghold. Then, Danio led the group in and attacked. A few days later, Danio and the others arrived at the support location. Changmen led his disciples out to greet them. Dainio hurriedly inquired about casualties and losses, but Changmen told them there were no significant losses. Then he asked about the scale on the other side. His reward will be an entire street in Tianlong City, and as long as the villagers assist him, he won't kill them. He doesn't want to be a wanderer for the rest of his life. He won't spare those who delay him, so as not to affect others. Then the two stopped paying attention to the crowd. At this moment, a man stood on high ground. He received a commission. As long as he completes the mission, even though he would be beaten badly, he deserved a share of the meat. Dainio expressed that this team didn't need people without determination to survive. They chose to stay with the team for a day, but was instantly grabbed by Dainio. He grabbed Dainio's elbow and slammed him hard against Dainio. He had to take action as an example, to show his determination. He glanced at these people, and then turned around to eat by himself. At this time, Dainio's friend stood up, and said he wanted to eat meat. He then rushed towards Dainio, so they secretly practice, and their sister can only watch from the side. Such a unique technique. He actually wanted to ask Grandpa. At this moment, Dainio was completely unaware. They are also practicing, day after day, never stopping. They only want to have a father like Steel Physique. Their father is reluctant for them to train, and was knocked down to the ground. They were actually twin brothers. Every day, they had to hit each other 1,000 times. After hitting, they still felt quite comfortable, even if they got seriously hurt. Dainio asked them if they wanted to get stronger. Do you want to eat meat? One person saw that the grilling was just right, and went up to grab it, but he was stopped by Dainio. That night, a few of them started to complain that Ajun didn't even come to participate in the mission. He usually just talks a lot, and they're exhausted from the training. Seeing this, if it's a big ox, maybe it's possible. Then the pavilion master instructed to check the child's inner strength every day, and on this day, Dainio and a few others set out to carry out the mission. When he heard them say that soaking in their father's medicinal barrel could relieve it, he thought it was just ordinary bamboo. The pavilion master, however, wasn't too convinced upon hearing this. It can be used to train the broth with a medicine barrel. That's some good stuff, but such powerful internal energy should come with intense pain. They can't practice too aggressively. The deputy storekeeper recalled that after training before, they would always say their muscles hurt so much, but he didn't pay too much attention to it. The brothers' internal strength doesn't belong to any of the 5 Dragon Hall's techniques. An investigation into other sects is needed. As for the opportunity the Lord mentioned, they have already surpassed that level, and they are very compatible with the 5 Dragon Temple's techniques. After giving them a welcome gift, they left the place. The assistant shopkeeper led the brothers to enter Hanyuan Island. The Lord had a pleasant conversation with the brothers. Then he let them go out and have fun. He discussed the situation with the assistant shopkeeper. The deputy shop owner of Wulong brought his child to pay a visit. Before the pavilion master entered, he was called by an artist. It was his junior sister, Xiaohua. He came here to see the joint disciples of the 3 halls. He is very interested in his brothers. His disciple informed Filong about Dainio's situation. Filong said there's no need to worry. All the shop owners won't care about this matter. He is very curious about what Dainio will do. In front of the Hanyuan party, Jilong also learned about the recent chaos in the city. Dainio has also gotten involved. They can only choose to remain uninvolved for now, because this matter concerns the eldest son. Filong is currently crafting swords for his siblings. He and the warrior will follow his arrangements. Ajun looks at Dainio's expression, and can only agree, stating that he will construct a complete organizational system. At the same time, they didn't care about anyone else's opinion. Dainio is also very helpless. After having a child, he doesn't want to get too involved in things, so Dainio decides to have Ajun take charge, but he has no choice but to go. He's just afraid the mission might get him hurt. Ajun looks at Dainio. He feels that Dainio has changed a lot. In the past, they weren't afraid of anything, silently admiring her, surprised she could easily reach a state of emptiness. Meanwhile, Dainio is discussing something with Ajuan. The captain's list is filled with their warriors. Their secret activities have been discovered. Falling into darkness, opening his eyes again, he asks his grandfather why he must undergo this training. But the old man tells his sister it's for his own good. The old man looks at his sister. She should hide the martial arts she learned from him. Even though she didn't listen, she still believed her grandfather had his reasons. The old man then continued guiding her in her training. She suppressed her martial senses. She had used her martial arts to help a friend before. The old man knew she did it for her family. She forgave him, but the old man reminded her not to use force unless absolutely necessary. He finally saved enough for the down payment. Today, he invited his younger sister to visit. She was a bit surprised at the sight that the old man had so much money. Then, she apologized to him, and he wasn't going alone. The captain gave him a list. It was full of companions involved in his plan. The old janitor actually had a hidden paradise. After searching for a century, that day, Daniel received a support mission, and it's a very remote place. Because there were so many people, it was difficult for the nearby sects to eliminate them. If Dania didn't go, he would be fired. He hopes everyone can have a better life. Ajun doesn't understand why Daniel is like this. He knows that Daniel is still supporting the orphanage. The Daniel now is nothing like before. But he's much weaker than he used to be. Then he told Ajun that his plan was to take over all the gangs. He wanted to leave a way out for the hired warriors. They earn very little. Those who are severely injured are immediately kicked out. And among the brothers, he was the only one called over. After Daniel left, everyone went their separate ways. Daniel also expressed his helplessness. After all, he now has a family. Ajun watched Daniel's movements. He knew Daniel was strong, but he felt like Daniel had become weaker. Then he asked Daniel about his plan. It shouldn't be as simple as it seems. Daniel reassured his friends that Ajun was very strong. If he becomes a partner, he would be the most trustworthy. That day, several people struck at the gang again. Ajun continued to mock everyone. If they wanted to continue with Daniel's plan, they would have to follow his lead. If they refused, they could all attack him together. Ajun said that Daniel's companions are too weak. Hearing this, everyone surrounded them. Daniel looked at Ajun. Ajun was also waiting for Daniel's response. Seeing that Daniel didn't stop him, the sister was quite surprised by this. Their whole family treats him, and the nanny is part of the family. The nanny is like a mother figure to the three siblings. From now on, he has to train with his brother every day. In the training yard, at the same time, he attacked another person. All four fell to the ground. He then took the boy away from the place. The sister invited the boy to practice with them. The boy, however, said that he wasn't the child of a big shot. They had heard about my sister's reputation. Immediately, the four of them attacked at the same time. She easily dodged them. He instantly flashed in front of the boy. He used the same move as his opponent. It turns out that it was my sister who came to help. He didn't want to intervene, but he couldn't just watch as they ganged up on him. My sister wanted to take their master to teach them a lesson. The others didn't underestimate her just because she was a girl. No matter how much pain he endured, he always made sure to land a hit. This also provoked others to gang up on him. But in an instant, they were all sent flying. Everyone was utterly shocked. They used to play together often. But today, he doesn't want his brothers to find him. Because Lan Hai's family was poor, he was often bullied by the sons of officials. But he never compromised. He excels in the 4 books and 5 classics. Helping his brother and father is effortless for him. During mealtime, he noticed something unusual about the boy. He is the nanny's son, and mastered it by 8. Her master was known as the Flying Dragon Heroine, and a monk who swept the floors helped with her training. Even those of the same generation had to call her senior aunt. He is exceptionally gifted, although it's a good thing. After listening to the deputy shopkeeper's explanation, the pavilion master was shocked. He said that the child could be brought over in half a month. The girl started martial arts at 3. The deputy shop owner approached an old man. He quietly sat down and waited for Han Yuan. The master only noticed his arrival after finishing several books. He came to inquire about the children's contract spirit. In less than half a year, the children will be able to use the contract spirit. Yet they are studying martial arts. When they were first established, they faced a lot of skepticism. But now they have their place. They study the shortcomings of martial arts, to modify the dangerous aspects. The next day, Daniel brought Ajun to the training ground to watch their friends train. But the people here seem a bit lacking. Ajun suggested calling the previous friends over. There are a large number of scholars in the membership group. They don't know martial arts. He quickly brought him back home, and introduced him to the kids. The man's name was Ajun. He was someone Dania called to help manage the thugs. They used to work together often before he got married. No one could compare, except for his wife. As he pondered, someone called out to him. It was the man from before. Dania was very happy to see him. Ruhua saw through Daniel's thoughts. In the end, they still chose the noodle stall by the roadside. Happy times always pass quickly. Ruhua is eagerly looking forward to seeing Daniel again. Daniel marveled at how such a beautiful girl could also be so kind. She introduced herself as Ruhua. Then she took Daniel and left the place. Ruhua suggested they go somewhere to eat and chat. So she took Dania to the most expensive restaurant. Daniel has never been here, not even once. At that moment, the startled voices on the bridge interrupted the three. A beautiful girl walked over here. Everyone was stunned by her beauty. Daniel was no exception. She walked directly up to Daniel. So he approached to introduce himself, but the girl thought that he was hitting on her. At that moment, the girl's boyfriend arrived. Only then did he realize he had mistaken her identity. Then the two laughed at him for trying to flirt at his age. The two are instantly defeated. The The white man wonders if the big bull will like this gift. At this moment, the big bull is particularly nervous. He came here to meet that girl. He saw a girl who seemed to be looking for someone. A short man appears here. He asks if this is the big boss. He is here to deliver a gift. Inside is the second brother's phone. Upon seeing this, the big boss draws his sword. Suddenly, the third brother came to report. Recently, the major gangs have been eliminated. It should be the work of the Heavenly Dragon Society. The leader wondered why they did this. Just as the two were discussing this matter, Daniel lamented how many people had been exploited by such an imposing house. He thought he had wiped out enough gangs. However, they learned that there was an even bigger gang, called the Sansha sect, and their leader was currently practicing. Moreover, his internal energy was surprisingly not in the dantian. Instead, it was filling his muscles. He felt confused. He decided to test it out in practice. Then, another gang was flattened by him, and even mimicking the poses when he gets excited. People think he's doing it out of loneliness, but he's actually practicing a secret martial art, even though he's just striking poses. But he still couldn't understand the mysteries within. His senior brother even has to personally teach internal skills. He had to do something to get the brothers' attention. He decided to treat them to candied hawthorn, then figure out where that energy was coming from. A 40-year-old man still reading comic books. After confirming he wasn't mistaken, he suspected it might be Professor Phalom's, but he couldn't ask Phylong. Phalom's movements are the best in the world. The Dapeng sword is also extraordinary. As long as she learned what the old man taught, it was enough. Meanwhile, the older brother and the deputy shopkeeper were practicing their marksmanship. The deputy shopkeeper noticed something unusual. The two brothers could actually infuse energy into the gun. Then the younger sister found the old man. She began to imitate the old man's sweeping posture. The old man wouldn't let the younger sister learn from other masters. But the younger sister was not curious at all, because she believed the old man was a master among masters. Daniel must have learned martial arts, but his moves are too clumsy. He lacks experience fighting strong opponents, but he has a strong will and a body of steel. This fighting style reminds Fei Long of a certain martial sect. That day, Fei Long was teaching the children martial arts. He looked at his sister and sighed about a woman wanting to surpass men. The road will be difficult. The brothers inherited their father's fighting spirit. That battle is still fresh in his memory. Xuan Miao held up 2 fingers and told Dania she was 20 years old. Dania immediately refused upon hearing this. He thought that girl was really strange. Upon hearing this, Xuan Miao told Dania when she would meet the girl. She then angrily left the place. Soon, the two of them arrived at the restaurant. Xuan Miao asked Daniu if he had any plans to remarry. He wanted to introduce a girl to him. Daniu asked if she was pretty. How old are you? He could only let it go. That day, Dania was changing clothes to go home. Xuan Miao felt a bit shy upon seeing this, so he urged Dania to get dressed quickly. He wanted to treat Dania to a nice meal. He clearly knew it was the doing of those warriors, but there was not a single piece of evidence. Dania hoped to find a higher authority to resolve this, using the captain's accusation against them as a reason. After all, the captain also benefited. They are also angry with the city's thugs. But there are rules in the group. They can't make the first move. Now they want to punish those people properly. The chaos in the city was soon known by the new captain. The nanny asks if Danio has been seeing anyone lately, and if he wants her to introduce someone to him. Danio says the child's approval is still needed. Then he sits by the window and thinks of his wife. The next day, Danio finds a few like-minded friends. Those big shots won't be buried. Danio returns home. The housekeeper tells Danio that the whole temple has brought many gifts during the day. After hearing this, Danio just says he is a rich kid. The companion asked about the next plan. Daniel wanted to completely punish those families. He plans to gather all the local thugs, and then find someone to manage them. They won't have to get involved directly. The companion asked Daniel what he planned to do. Daniel decided to bury them. Then the two went to the tavern. Daniel let those thugs go. They probably wouldn't dare act out again. Of course, they wouldn't surrender easily. They even used the legendary whirlwind kick. All of this stems from Dania's hatred for these villains. They are guilty of every crime. Letting them go would only implicate their own families. They are local gang members. Yet they publicly knelt on the street to admit their mistakes. Recently, a group of masked individuals has appeared in the city. They specifically target gangs. Anyone marked by them has no chance of escaping. Seeing this, the leader immediately drew his sword and stepped forward. But he was directly interrupted by the big bull. Then everyone knelt before the big bull. His companion asked what to do next. The big bull replied that he was still thinking, and barged into a gang's hideout. The leader immediately ordered his men to take him down. Upon hearing this, the crowd rushed toward Daniel. In an instant, they were all knocked away by the big bull. The big bull slowly approached the leader. A faint light began to glow in front of the two of them. The two brothers were passing the light back and forth. As they slowly moved forward, the light gradually merged. The next day, Daniel put on a mask. Meanwhile, the two brothers were practicing at home. The two brothers found this kind of training a bit boring. Then they exchanged a smile. They decided to try something that used to trouble their masters. Their grandfathers also told them to practice it every day. The next day, the captain was punished with a suspension. On his way home from work, Big Nyo kept thinking about this matter. That man actually has such influence within the organization. But he won't let that man go. At that moment, Dania's captain also appeared. Upon learning what had happened, the captain directly charged at the thug. Then he led Daniu and the others away from the scene, leaving the man standing there. At that moment, someone appeared behind them. Daniu remembered that he seemed to be the father of those bad kids. The other party recognized him as well, and expressed disbelief that a top security guard would act against ordinary people. Daniu didn't want to waste time with him, and he felt he was a martial artist too. After work that day, Daniu unexpectedly ran into a group of thugs. While bullying others, these people were no match for him. When he stepped out of the barrel, he felt his body filled with power. Then he threw a punch. Although it was just the basics now, he had already mastered internal power. Daniel recalls the previous match. He was able to hold on to. For the sake of the child, he must become stronger. Then Daniel entered the medicine barrel. Ripples appeared in the medicine barrel. But to train a body that can resist internal energy, the highest level is the unity of internal and external skills. To master it, you must learn to breathe with your body. But breathing with the body, Daniel is still not quite there. Daniel was soaking in the medicinal barrel. He recalled the conversation he had with his master earlier. His master told him that his body wasn't strong enough. If he were struck by inner force, they wouldn't need to train their inner power. He planned to win over the family first. Daniel came home from work. Everyone hurriedly showcased their gifts. Daniel heard that it was a gift from his partner. He looked puzzled, sat down to talk. The kids had just come back from school. He had prepared some toys for the boys, and a ring for the little sister. Even the nanny got a gift. And then they'll talk later. The next day, Daniel's partner arrives. He introduces himself as Quan Miao. He was just passing by. Came to the house. His father is waiting at the door. The conversation between the two doesn't seem like father and son. There's no emotion involved at all. They're more concerned about the two heroes. Afterwards, he tells them to go eat first, to eliminate the entire martial world. He is the master of the 5 Killers house. What makes Shi Long believe there is a traitor in the association is his son. He has actually been toyed with by a child. At this moment, the child has already returned home. Dania fell into deep thought. No more than 10 people in the martial world know the man's identity. He appeared in the Jianghu. The 4 major sects of the martial world have been silenced. His purpose is very simple, but I still don't believe this legend. The old man was speechless. Isn't it better for Dania to worry about making himself stronger? If the child can also become stronger, then there's no need to worry about these things. As a scholar, he changed the rules of the martial world. Even the leader of the demonic sect, the best in the world, left smiling after just a few words with him, and followed his rules. Even the old man worked for him. Daniel believes the old man once swept the ground for him. The old man did not expect Dania to challenge each master one by one. Although martial arts can be kept secret in this world, but in the face of power, they're also fragile. A warrior can be as pitiable as a scholar. That man is called a legend. The younger sister reluctantly agreed upon hearing this. The conversation between father and son was also overheard by the artists outside. After a few days, he finally learned what the children were interested in, dining together with Daniu and the old man. At that moment, the sister came back and saw him. She wanted to play with her brothers. Daniu quickly stopped her. He told his sister that this girl would end up not being able to marry, and based on new clothes and accessories as conditions, using Daniu's body for experiments in exchange. Daniu agreed without needing to spend any money. The brothers soaked in the herbs. It felt exceptionally comfortable. They were completely immersed in it, because some of the herbs couldn't be bought outside. He sought out the miracle doctor at Tianlong Medical Hall. After seeing the names of the herbs, the miracle doctor said Daniel couldn't afford them at all. Upon learning that Daniel was using the herbs to strengthen his body, the miracle doctor proposed. They wanted to become as strong as him. This way, the sister discovered their injuries. The brothers tried to prevent their sister from learning. They lied to their sister as part of their training. Daniel recalled that after training, the master would always use medicine to heal wounds. It's harder to deal with your own child. Big Nyo struck down with a club. Instantly went to check the injuries. He still decided not to teach this martial art. But the brothers took pride in their father. The twin heroes criticized the boy's father for sending him on the mission. But he says everything was his own doing. On this day, Dainio prepares to teach the brothers his martial arts. Training together might be better. He also understands why the master took in an outsider as a disciple. He then left the place. 3 days later, the boy left the heavenly dragon gate. The twin heroes of heaven and earth are by his side. They were sent to Tianlong Gate by the boy's father for 10 years. Today, they return with him. The most important thing is that he can help the big bull take revenge. This is something the heavenly dragon gate cannot do. The big bull should be very clear about who his father is. The big bull can also dismiss what he was known for in the past. I hope the big bull thinks it over carefully. As he walked out of the hall, he ran into Big Nyo, who was bruised and battered. He approached to ask if he wanted to leave with him. Big Nyo expressed his difficulty. His conditions are indeed better than those of Tianlong Manhua. Moreover, in that place, the big bull can enjoy his old age peacefully. He hopes Zhilong won't interfere. After all, Big Nyo is a warrior hired with money. It's not an unreasonable request. Zhilong knows that Big Nyo cannot leave right now. He then stated that he wouldn't obstruct him. At such a young age, he employed a strategy of turning family against each other. His father excelled in scheming, and he inherited this skill. Today, he came to bid farewell to Zhilong, but his main purpose was to take Dainio with him. Then the two erupt, attacking each other with full force. How terrifying this frail boy is. He stood his ground against the renowned strategist known for his wisdom. In order to stir up conflict in the martial world, in a moment of contemplation, Big Cow has taken the initiative to strike, but is easily blocked by him. Both feel that if they let their guard down, they will be defeated by the other. Hearing this, the assistant shopkeeper also drew his weapon. He looked at Dainio's stance. It seemed full of openings, but at the same time, he felt that if he attacked, he would get hit instead. That's when Dainio, covered in injuries, opened the door. He was asked about his injuries. Dainio said not to worry about it. He just fought someone who wanted to take him as a disciple. Dainio told him to get ready, then they could start. Afterward, the old man checked the child's pulse. It really is just as Dainio said. The next day, inside the Wulong Hall, the deputy owner was exercising alone. He was waiting for a man. Because of the child's internal energy issue, treatment from the Tianlong Society is needed. The old man was shocked by this. He proceeded with emergency treatment. They made it with their own hands. He immediately knelt down on the ground. Thank you both for saving our lives. But when he learned that the old man wanted to take the child as a disciple, he chose to refuse. He couldn't let the child leave this place. They interrupted his thoughts. Dainio asked who they were. The two old men looked confused. Then they turned into shadows and appeared in front of Dainio. At that moment, Dainio seemed to remember him. That night, Dainio returned home. Although he had been defeated by those three before, he believed his own strength was still quite strong. So he needs to find someone stronger than him to be the child's master. Two old men appeared. There is not a shred of evidence. Then, Dainio made a request to Philong. It was a request for a duel. Hearing this, Philong laughed heartily. He really couldn't understand Dainio's thinking. Philong was forging weapons. He asked who had hurt his child. Philong told Dainio it was the leader of the martial alliance. Because Dainio had defeated his eldest disciple. But now, everyone is dead. At this moment, Dainio's younger sister looked at her two brothers with concern. She then lay down between them and started crying. He didn't stay with his brothers to endure the pain together. The brothers quickly comforted their sister. At this moment, Dainio arrived at Feilong's shop, but the master simply told him, if you don't want to end up like Wudong Fengshan, stop meddling with Tianlong sect. This was a warning. Next time, it won't be settled so easily. With that, he vanished from sight. The alliance leader asked everyone to leave first and consider countermeasures. At this moment, someone appeared on the beam above. The visitor threw a box he was holding in front of him. Inside was the head of the Black Veil Manor's master. The leader asked the master for his name. Hearing this, Dainio fell into deep thought. He then decided that since he wanted to become a disciple, he had to choose the best master to teach him. The fury of the Heavenly Dragon sect directly led to one of the branches of the Martial Alliance being taken over. The high-ranking members of the Martial Alliance were discussing this matter. He realized he was fully healed. At this moment, the deputy shopkeeper of Wulong came over. He told Dainio about the children's condition. Although the children were rescued, if their internal energy remains unstable in the Dantian, there will still be some issues. But every time he is seriously injured, his body undergoes changes. His recovery speed is several times that of an ordinary person. He could feel his body getting stronger again. After Dainio stretched his body, after seeing the child beside him, he slowly fell into a peaceful sleep. The boy has been practicing martial arts with his master since he was young. But his daily requirement is to take hits. He doesn't understand the purpose of this martial arts. At this moment, the bedridden Nyo also smiled. Then he opened his eyes. The acupoints of his body began to glow. Just like that, he sat up. Now he should be in a state of mindfulness. He must use his mind to move his body. Then he gave a mischievous smile. No one knew what he was thinking. His consciousness and body were always one. And finally, there's Bull. Bull doesn't know why he needs to learn to take hits. Then he remembers something. His consciousness has awakened. He once heard his master say, Dainio entered a dream again. His master no longer hit him, and told him he had done very well. He would soon be able to stand and take hits. Then it's getting hit while moving. Then, he sat up from the bed. The pain in his entire body caused him to spit out a mouthful of blood. He fainted again. The doctor examined Dainio's injuries. His body was recovering rapidly. It was the old man who had been telling stories to his sister. At this moment, Dainio was lying on the hospital bed. He once again dreamed of his master's teachings. After countless blows rained down on him, Dainio finally stood up and tried to fight back. The owner instantly realizes that the newcomer is a master. He then cupped his fists and inquired about the visitor's intention. The visitor stated that they harmed a child they shouldn't have. Upon hearing this, the black-clad figure instantly charged at the newcomer. The moonlight illuminated the newcomer's face. They still have several years left on their mountain closure deadline. Within a dense forest, the members of the Black Veil House are escaping. They also know that the Heavenly Dragon Society has started to take action. At this moment, a figure ahead blocks their way. The sect leader is reading in the library. His junior brother rushes to find him, saying that the Tianlong Association has crossed the line. The sect leader tells him that whatever happens outside has nothing to do with them. So, he suggested that everyone should teach the children together, but those people must bear the wrath of Tianlong. One of the four major forces in the martial arts world wants the other side to pay a certain price. Within the Wudong sect, Filong discovered that the children had internal energy similar to that of the Dragon Dance Hall, but the Dragon Dance Hall only taught them the basic techniques, and yet, they also had other internal energy within them. Now, in order to heal them, Filong infused his own internal energy into the children. All the big shots were waiting outside. He told everyone that Dainio and the child were not in life-threatening danger, and that there were more disciples besides just them. Afterward, they arrived at the conference room. The doctor had only seen one person like this. It was when he was treating Master Kunlun, but there were still some differences. Dainio's body was resisting his acupuncture. Hearing this, Filong walked out of the room. This is not good for them. The doctor also noticed something unusual while treating Dainio. Dainio should have been in critical condition. Not only was his pulse normal, but his wound hadn't reopened either. The old man was still telling stories to his sister. He also learned about the brothers' situation. Meanwhile, the brothers were receiving treatment from the celestial dragon. He discovered that the two brothers actually had two kinds of illnesses in their bodies. Who exactly taught the brothers this? That is a unique world. There, beasts roam freely. There are also beings that can be called human. That day, a person descended from the sky. It attracted the attention of many. They regarded the two brothers as their own children. They swore in the name of the twin heroes of heaven and earth. Upon hearing this, Dainio immediately knelt down. The elder hurriedly stepped forward to help him up. Then the three of them left the place. Dainio unleashed all his fury onto him. When Dainio released the sword, the blue-clad man fell to the ground. Then he stared intently at the two elders. The elder told Dainio not to worry. Dainio surprisingly caught the sword that was thrust at him. He stepped on the man's foot. The man couldn't pull out the sword. He couldn't move. Dainio's fist went straight for his face. The man knew the elder was not ordinary, but his target was only Dainio. He then walked straight towards the sea. He drew his sword. A sword lunged at Dainio. One of them directly rescued his brother. Another person has taken the younger brother away. The man inquired who they were, but the elder suggested that the man should consider what is behind him. At this moment, Dainio had already gotten up from the ground. He immediately reached for it, but was kicked away by the man. The man looked at Dainio in the distance. He actually smiled, because the two old men had already rushed over. Dainio looked at his child, thinking of a way out. He prayed to the heavens for a chance. Just as he was falling into despair, he saw two old men in the distance staring at him. Dainio noticed that the rooster had stopped, but the man used his brother to threaten Dainio, forcing him to throw over his weapon. The man picked up the weapon and found it was suspended, then slowly walked toward Dainio, relentlessly attacking Dainio. In an instant, he eliminated all the enemies. At that moment, the man also came over with the child. Seeing this, he was extremely furious. He knocked the older brother unconscious with a powerful strike. Seeing this, Dainio rushed over. Although he was hit, he still managed to run to the riverbank. He immediately turned around, drew his weapon, and charged at the pursuing enemies. Dainio's strikes were deadly. He wouldn't give the enemy any chance. The man shouted that he wanted to kill the children. Dainio said their target was him. He would head to the riverbank and let the children go, so they could take his life. He then got up and ran straight towards the riverbank. Seeing Ding Yao, they immediately took out hidden weapons and shot at him, but Big Bull directly cleaved the attacking sword in half. Another sword pierced into his side. However, Big Bull locked onto the blade. He reversed his grip, broke the sword, and charged toward the enemy. He quickly picked up the weapon and hid in the bushes. But the man began to apply force with his hands. Big Bull looked at the man with red eyes. The man ordered him to throw away his weapon. As Big Bull discarded his weapon, he contemplated an opportunity. The man commanded his subordinates to attack Big Bull. After knocking them back, Dania realized that these people were stronger than before. Just then, a man appeared with a child. Dania told the man to let go of the child, accusing him of lying, telling him to drop his weapon. Dania hadn't even seen the child. How could he surrender? At this moment, several people jumped up simultaneously and used a combined attack technique. Then a few people fled from the shadows. It doesn't matter how many. He just needs to leave one enemy alive. When Dania knocked down another person, a voice came through. They have countless beautiful memories here. Who would have thought it would be so dangerous today? Both his and his child's lives are hanging by a thread. After Dania confirmed there were only 6 people around, he immediately knocked down the guide. He was hit. We must not let the enemy escape. He looked at the corpse. There aren't many organizations with the guts to commit suicide. He used to bring his child here to play often. That person immediately bit down on the poison. It was his own disciple in his arms. People around were climbing over the walls to escape. Indeed, there was no sign of the child. The enemy is definitely going to act tonight. Seeing Phylong, they hurriedly flee. But they may not know why. He is called Phylong. In an instant, only one person survived. It would be difficult for them to take in disciples. A section of the city wall. A few people climb over the wall. Phylong has been waiting here for a long time. He coldly asks who they are. They followed behind the Big Bull. They learned that the disciple of the martial arts leader was defeated by the Big Bull. They speculated that it might be the work of the Martial Arts Alliance. But if the Big Bull is a disciple of the Ma family, his strength should be quite strong. They indicate that if they want to see the child, they should go with them. Dania puts away his weapon and lets them lead the way. Then he follows the few of them and runs off. In the distant sky, the old man sweeping the ground watched all of this. As soon as one person opens their mouth, the child is directly knocked down by Daniu. He can't give the other party a chance to threaten him. He only needs to leave one person behind. Before that, he needs to take out a few more people. Dania looks at the remaining few. The enemy finally makes a move. The mysterious figure raises his sword and stabs at Daniu. He is directly knocked away. Then he transforms into a fierce deity and rises. He has been waiting for a long time. In the days that followed, Dania would constantly drink himself into a stupor. He just hopes the other party can throw out the bait. He will bite without hesitation. On the day he gets drunk again, the enemy definitely can't escape. He recalled why his child was captured. Could it be because of the previous secret mission? He suddenly realized. It must have been the Wulin Alliance. He jumps down directly, but there is no one here anymore. After seeing the child's toy, Dania struggles to suppress his anger. He knew those people were there. A child of a Class A gatekeeper had caused such a commotion. The captain is already starting to regret taking on this mission. They can only hide for now and look for an opportunity. Meanwhile, Danio has arrived at the place where the child went missing. He follows the clues left behind to find the ruined temple. No matter who the opponent was, he would save the child. Inside the dilapidated temple, a few people watched the unconscious child. They already knew the city was under lockdown, but he had to find his child. He stepped out of the door. He sought the feelings of the past. Then he said goodbye to his wife. He knew he was strong. Then he took out the damaged secret manual. His wife was unexpectedly squatting beside him. She watched him lost in memories. And at the very bottom of the box was his weapon. He had promised his wife not to use it again. He had the nanny take his sister to his home to stay for a few days. Then he started digging in the house. He unearthed a box. The first thing that appeared when he opened it was a photo of his wife. He missed his wife deeply. Daniu is also driven to madness. He wants to know where his child was lost. Daniu returned home and desperately tried to calm himself down. He needed to find his child himself. At this time, Daniu has already arrived. He sees the scene before him. He asks where his child is. Phylong is extremely angry. He declares that he will definitely find his child. When Phylong found out, he came to heal his disciple. Upon learning that the child was lost, he was filled with rage. Immediately seal off the entire city by showcasing his martial arts skills in front of them. But just as they were returning, several mysterious figures appeared before them. He was outnumbered and overwhelmed. He was seriously injured. He constantly takes risks to earn a living. He just hopes the children can grow up healthy. But today he learned the children are missing. Just now, Feilong's disciple tried to impress Daniu's child. He didn't know who she resembled. Their mother wasn't like that either. Daniel could only try to remember. And so, a joyful day comes to an end. Children are everything to a man. When they got home, the sister was watching their father. The three of them learned to read. Daniel blamed the two brothers too much. But the sister reminded Daniel to hurry up. Daniel looked at his sister. Each of them is a fan of the boss. They invited the siblings to join their group. Joining them would mean a great future ahead. The sister rejected him directly. Then the three of them turned and left. Because the level of the academy here is very high. It's for the child's future considerations. This place is still more suitable for them. Inside the martial arts school, the boys who were watching earlier approached the three siblings. Fortunately, Jilong was angry on behalf of Daniel's sister. Daniel asked if he would be driven away for offending them. Jilong felt that Daniel hoped to be driven away. Yijing offered to hire him at a high price. He hoped Daniel would think it over carefully. They are members of the Black Sand Group. The leader ordered them to thoroughly investigate Daniel's situation. If necessary, they must carry out the elimination plan. They need to avoid the worst-case scenario. The next day, Daniel was asked about taking on apprentices. Seeing this, Daniel bought all the toys. At this moment, someone on the tall building is watching them. Inside a dilapidated temple, they told the captain about their investigation of Daniel's situation. Upon hearing this, the captain fell into deep thought. When he learned it was because they saw other kids with toys, he decided to take them shopping. Seeing their smiles, he realized he had been too stingy, and the brothers only picked a few small items. He didn't want his children to take risks. After that, he walked out of the room, leaving them behind. Back home, he saw the brothers looking dejected. Daniel was surrounded by several people. They all expressed their determination. Daniel watched them argue. Then he spoke up and interrupted them. He said he wouldn't take them as disciples. They hadn't seen each other for a long time. During dinner, the kids kept telling Daniel about what had happened recently. At night, they fell asleep with their father just like when they were little. Early the next morning, perhaps he'd been away from them too long. He started to recall being too strict with them before. Then he decided to buy more meat to reward the kids. When he returned home, the children were exceptionally happy. Daniel was startled. So he is Jilong. Then he was told he could leave. Daniel didn't want to get involved in their affairs. He just wanted to see his children quickly. Is about to agree to the boy's offer. But at that moment, Jilong interrupts them. Big Bull doesn't know who he is. He still calls him old man. The guard introduced him as Lord Jilong. He was afraid that Feilong and Lianlong would team up against the junior. Meanwhile, Big Bull is talking to the boy about the job. Big Bull says he doesn't want to do anything dangerous. The boy says he can just watch the gate. Big Bull, seeing how well the boy understands him, then let's wait for the child's father to choose. Feilong has also chosen to join the competition. Just as the junior was about to explode, Gulong stopped him and said to save their father back. Those kids were clearly discovered by him. Although they hadn't officially become disciples, he had been training them all along. After all, we need to wait for the child's father's consent. Dianlongwen expresses approval. Dianlong was the first to break the silence. He wanted to take the three children as disciples. Everyone was shocked upon hearing this. Brother Long was the first to oppose. It is all because of three children. Their father has participated in a secret mission, yet they cannot tell them about it, because Jilong has sensed that there is a traitor among the higher-ups. Seeing that no one in the crowd spoke up, the payment would be 10 times what it is now. Daniel was stunned after hearing that, but even with 10 times the effort, he is still somewhat unfortunate. They are rising figures in the martial arts world. Today, they have gathered together for a meeting. He didn't expect such an interpretation. Knowing fate, the father is unparalleled. So cool. Daniel said it would be perfect if the boy had a bit more manners. The boy laughed and said, inviting Daniel to protect him, because he recognized the characters on it. He then asked what he could do. Daniel replied that after becoming a father, he would be able to know his fate. The boy burst into laughter upon hearing that. Daniel was getting ready to say goodbye to his companions, but he has gone missing. Then they were taken to a room. It was filled with antiques. A painting caught Daniel's attention. When Yen and the others had no choice but to keep eating. After the meal, they finally arrived outside the city. At this moment, his captain was already waiting again. A group of people said they would take care of the children, but the children wanted Daniel to come along too. So he started to lecture them. Whenever he eats something delicious, he thinks of his own children, let alone their parents. Their bodies are so frail. How worried their parents must be. The disciples expressed that they would do their best to help their master. The three siblings, one of them, inside the restaurant. At this moment, Daniel was eating. He noticed that the two were eating too little. Upon hearing this, Dianlong said he would do his best to win over these two children. Inside Feilong Hall, Long is also talking with his disciples. Though he is old, he still wants to take in the three sons. The outcome would change. People have arrived at the Dragon Hall. Please, Uncle Master, help me. He also wants to take the child as a disciple. He sees endless potential in the child. Hearing the younger sister say yield, the Deputy Electric Master doubts where he learned that. At this moment, several young boys in the distance are watching them. They think the two brothers are nothing special if they took action. Thus, the younger brother easily wins. As the second brother walks back, the younger sister hurriedly checks her brother's injuries. His arm is already bruised. The younger sister thinks the older brother should yield instead of resisting forcefully. He caught the thrusting staff. The opponent can still fight back. One kick directly breaks the wooden stick. After hitting the opponent, he turns around to prepare for another kick, but the referee has already stepped in between them. They actually hoped the younger brother would lose. The two brothers shone too brightly. There were too many rivals trying to take disciples. At this moment, the younger brother had already reached his opponent. He switched to blocking with his arms, slowly advancing. Seeing such a sight, all the big shots were a bit surprised. The old man from earlier was watching from afar, facing the opponent's attack. The younger brother could only dodge for now and close the distance, but the opponent gave him no chance to approach. Seeing this, the younger brother quickly stepped forward, no longer avoiding the attacks. He then puts a headband on his younger brother. This way, the two brothers can be distinguished. At this moment, the sister feels sorry for her older brother, blaming him for being too inflexible. Meanwhile, the match on stage has already begun. Hearing this, the younger brother begins to warm up. His opponent, who specializes in staff techniques, is also the strongest among them. The staff technique can be flexible and close range. It can be used for both offense and defense. The assistant shopkeeper reminds his younger brother to remember the previous teachings. The deputy hall master of the 5 Dragon Hall is arguing with a man. Hall Dragon hurriedly comes out to mediate. He states that the practice is not over yet. For the sake of his brother's health, they can switch fighters, whether writing or painting. What matters is the spirit. That's why he has achieved so much today. He is the Heavenly Dragon of the Heavenly Dragon Association. At this moment on the battlefield, the man never uses a pen to write. He writes as if he is practicing martial arts. Each character takes an immense effort for him. His nephew watched and repeatedly praised him. He advised his nephew. The younger sister and brother in the audience both breathed a sigh of relief. The audience also thought it was an exciting match. But one performer said this wasn't a competition. He said, "How is this different from a street fight?" The one speaking was the father of the child who lost the first round. The brother just wants to defeat the opponent fairly and squarely. If the opponent has no tricks, he won't either. After exchanging moves again, the older brother noticed the opponent had already fainted. He stopped his move and caught the opponent. The other party said they are not in the mood to call him right now. Meanwhile, the second round of the match for the brother has already started. There are no tricks in this round. Both are facing off head-on. The sister doesn't understand why her brother is like this. Hong Ban directly refused. He then realized he had overreacted. So he stated that there was no suitable candidate for Dainyu. Dainyu didn't understand why the other person was angry. Then he asked him to give the remaining 200 points. He actually still wanted to find a mother for his child. Then he thought about asking his companion to introduce him to a friend. The requirements aren't high. As long as they love the child, that's enough. If they're pretty, that's even better. He was so comfortable that he felt a bit unaccustomed. At this moment, his companion asked him about the children. Dainyu expressed that he was not interested in men. Dainyu knew he was quite charming. But why hadn't any women noticed? Next comes a punch. Then a whip kick is thrown out. But it is stopped by the Electric Dragon Gate Master. The brother wins his first battle. Dainyu was leisurely sitting on the carriage. As the swordplay continued to change, the brother can only block. And the sister reminds the brother not to just focus on the sword. The brother understands something. He then dodges the attack. This meant that the opponent was just using a wooden sword. It was unfair for him to wear gloves. Then the two of them resumed their positions to compete again. The opponent used changes in swordplay. My brother was the first to get hit. Then he took out a pair of gloves. These gloves are made of black silk. They can be used with both needles and swords. Next, he spoke. But my brother took off his gloves. Because he is skilled in the use of knives. He saw that his brother was unarmed. So he chose to use boxing instead. He glanced at the deputy store manager. The deputy store manager immediately agreed and called his brother over, to cause any real damage. Seeing this, the brother directly pushed out with both palms. The brother moved forward to try and help his opponent up, but was pushed away. He then got up and asked the referee to let him use a weapon. And the older brother lets the opponent attack first. Upon hearing this, the opponent threw a punch. The brother leaned forward to deflect the force. Although the opponent threw several punches in succession, the distance was too close. The homeowner also has no way to deal with it. After all, it's also difficult to handle the person assigning the task. If a group of people is sent out, it should be possible. So they must quickly gather intelligence to deal with that person. At this moment, the children's duel has also begun. The two leaders are discussing their latest task. Their target is merely an A-rank guard, but they nearly killed the senior disciple of the Martial Alliance leader. The vice leader feels this mission is unworthy of their formation. After all, the information about the target is unclear, and so, they ride the carriage back to Westlake. There's a saying in the martial world, the house of killing has claimed the most lives. The house of capturing is the most skilled. The Black House of Killing is the king of assassins. Within the Black House of Killing, Danyu is sitting in the carriage, unusually cheerful. He's anticipating the reward when they return. After all, he comes from a wealthy family, thinking about how he will become a grandfather someday. He knows he must keep working hard to make money. Finally, Danyu and the others return to the association's territory. Members of the association were already waiting for them again. Danyu was very grateful for Masho's help. They hope to meet again someday. Masho chooses to remain silent. The latter half completely ruined it. No one could shoot their arrows. They just left. Afterward, out of boredom, they started fishing on the boat. A few days pass like this. I still can't learn it. He approached the child and continued to watch, but he fell asleep unknowingly. When he opened his eyes again, he was immediately wet by the child's urine. Then Danyu walked over and said something to him. Danyu had previously studied the second half, but I have always been unable to comprehend. Although it's a simple picture, Emosho hoped that Danyu could withstand his attack. Everyone gathered around to watch. Danyu immediately started channeling his energy technique. But he forgot he hadn't learned the second half. Seeing this, Emosho asked why he hadn't learned it yet, and suddenly felt a strange emotion. He quickly brushed off the thought, harshly scolding him for being too weak. Then he walked over to Emosho and asked if he wanted to stab. A long-awaited sparring session. The elder brother steps onto the stage first, and his opponent was a former rich kid. At this moment, Daniel still didn't know what was happening at home. His partner was seasick and kept vomiting. He looked at his partner's discomfort. Looking at the children on the field, the deputy shopkeeper tells the two brothers not to be nervous, and to be less precise with their strikes. After all, it's not impressive for the strong to bully the weak. At this moment, the referee calls for the competitors to enter. Everyone discussed this spectacle, and the children were eager to get started. Only the deputy store manager felt depressed, because he hasn't yet taken the children as his disciples. It has attracted so many opponents, but the rewards don't stop there. The master blacksmith will also gift his own sword, and personally instruct on sword techniques. This competition is merely a beginner's practice in the dojo. It has attracted the four from the dragon dance. The boy merely made a strange gesture. This drew the attention of many people. It also attracted the attention of the big shots in the association. They stated that as long as he wins the match, he will personally guide him, as if they had just had a child. He also has another purpose for coming here. He surprisingly does not have permission to view the information about the Great Slave. The information of a Class A guard is actually classified. He hopes his senior brother can help take a look. Inside the Wulong Hall, someone is reporting the recent actions of the Wulin Alliance to the owner. Then his junior brother burst in, indicating that he is about to have a disciple. The two then excitedly began discussing. The master fell into deep thought upon hearing this. In the martial world today, only the Shaolin abbot has an indestructible body, but he passed away long ago. Then he told the man to rest. He will investigate the situation. The man defeated by Ding Yo and the Martial Alliance was lying in bed. His master asked him why he was so badly injured. There are fewer than 20 people in the Tianlong Association who could defeat him. The man said his opponent was just an A-rank warrior. Moreover, his body was like steel, or it's one of the 5 rare Jiaolong fishing rods in the world. If they don't have it at the dock, they'll have to leave the ship. At that moment, the child said he had a rod, but he would only return it to the association. Daniel was sure he was also a rich kid. Dania had forgotten that he came from a wealthy family. Mosho spoke up again, saying they needed support first. Then he pulled out a bag from his clothes. It turns out to be a precious pearl. Mosho insists on accepting only cash. Upon hearing this, Danio asked which family's dog was named 200 Tails. They've already had a conflict with the Wulin Alliance. Without 200 taels of gold, they won't be able to get out of bed. While Danio was thinking about how to get rid of the debt, his companion next to him suddenly offered to pay. The master had already disappeared. The boy was still worried about running into bandits, but he didn't know that the bandits had been completely wiped out. At this time, Big Ox was comfortably lying on the deck, and Mosho told him that he needed to pay 200 taels for the boat fare. When the leader approached the boy again, He pulled something out from his body and told the boy to take this thing to the nearby money exchange. Then he could get what he desired. When the boy looked up, he thought the boy was lying, so he attacked him with fists and feet. He was the second man weaker than Susu who was still protecting him. He didn't want to pay attention to these ants, but they actually delivered themselves to his door. They asked if he had seen a woman. They were actually coveting the master's beauty. Although the boy said he hadn't seen her, they still dismounted and walked up to him. He directly knocked him away with a single palm. He thought he was the god of corpses. Follow the boy. Soon, a group of people arrived. They were the bandits that had been rampant lately. When they approached the boy, he's already in enough trouble. The demon-called leader was pulled into the room by the boy. He told him not to make a sound. Then he ran outside, because the boy looked too much like his brother. He thanked Mosu for the help. He hoped that Mosu could directly take them back to the association. Upon hearing this, they were going to bury Dania directly. He saved Daniu. What appeared was a sky full of stars. Danyo woke up on the boat. At the same time, his muscles started to spasm violently. Pain began to spread throughout his body. Once he stabilized, the leader took advantage of this and thrust at Danyo again. But Danyo didn't dodge. He simultaneously countered with his sword. Then the two of them fell to the ground at the same time. They opened their eyes again. Then he ordered his men to quickly board the ship, but only Danyo remained standing below. Seeing this, he turned his attention to Danyo. Danyo instantly raised his blade to block. He directly pushed the leader back. Noxian saw these people daring to make a move on his ship, and immediately launched a water attack. But it was deflected by the leader's dual blades. He rushed straight towards Mosho, but was immediately knocked back. Wherever he went, people fell one after another. He was like a bull, directly knocking the enemies away. Everyone present doubted if he was even human. At the same time, the leader had already jumped onto the ship. Then he gave the order to kill Daniu, capture the children on the boat. At this moment, Danyo made up his mind. He must return alive. Then he charged at the enemy. Then Daniu immediately jumped off the boat. Moso also gave the order to set sail. The Wulin Alliance's target was the child on the boat. He wouldn't let them leave. Can they survive? Moso was startled by this. Dania knows that Moso is still angry with him, but the child needs someone to take care of them. After some hesitation, Moso agreed to Daniu's request. At this moment, Daniu has already reached the shore. Waiting there for him are many enemies, including Moso. They urge him to get out of bed quickly. But Dania hopes he can lead his companions forward, only by returning to his own children. The sister, however, remarked that she had seen this level before. The two brothers also mentioned that masters always fly. Upon hearing this, the old man quickly explained that flying wasn't his strong suit. The sister made a quick decision. Everything would wait until their father returned to decide. The sister doubted whether they were really experts. Seeing this, the old man could only demonstrate a more advanced martial art. Then he took a step forward and walked into the sky. The three siblings were very surprised. The old man was extremely pleased with himself. The old man indicated that they could take him, as long as he becomes their disciple. Upon hearing this, the boy immediately knelt down to become a disciple, but his sister appeared just in time to stop them. They then went to the outskirts. Although they swept the floor every day, they claimed to be skilled martial artists, and they began to demonstrate in front of the boys. The boys were very impressed with the elderly man, seeing that the boy had woken up. At that moment, two strange sounds came from outside. The elderly man who had been sweeping the floor appeared before them. He indicated that they could teach the brothers some tricks. The boys' arguments surprisingly attracted the two to come and watch. They went to great lengths to please the boys. Even if the stone is big enough, it can't handle it. But the brothers still have no attitude. The sister silently went to study. The remaining two continued to practice, but the brother wanted to try a feint. She told him this was the dojo's martial arts, so their father was very strong. He didn't use any feints, but very few people can actually do it. It requires long-term training. The older brother suddenly stopped and asked them why their father's martial arts were different from those taught at the dojo. The younger sister stepped in front of her brother and kicked out. She told him this was their father's martial arts. Then she kicked out again. She kept fainting. At that moment, his subordinate appeared to report. A group of bandits had attacked their followers. He immediately ordered them to return to headquarters. Then he continued reminiscing about his brother's home. The children were practicing martial arts. He reminds the leader that many changes will come in the future. He does not wish to become an enemy of the leader. Then he disappeared from the spot. Afterward, he arrived at a gravestone. It turned out to be his brother's grave. The surroundings have been stained red with blood. Someone emerges behind him. The surrounding carnage was all caused by him. He wants to use his power to help the cult, but he was refused. If he said any more, he'd be breaking the rules. Daeniu returned to the two. When asked about the plan, he had no strategy to offer. At this moment, the leader of the demonic cult walks alone in the mountains. They can only ask about the next destination. Then they disembarked and headed to the next stop. On the boat, Daeniu asked Mashu if they could skip the next stop, but he was refused. Mashu wouldn't listen to any of Dainiu's reasons. They hoped to hand over their enemy. Mosho doesn't interfere in their grudges. But on the ship, they must follow the rules. Once off the ship, he won't care. The leader's ship isn't a match. Daeniu had already jumped onto the boat from the water. Those who were chasing closely followed and jumped up, but they were directly struck into the water by Mosho. The leader is protecting his family. They are members of the Martial Alliance. It fell onto the flagpole. Mosho was furious. The power of the water directly attacked Daeniu. The immense strength caused Daeniu to break the sail. As everyone was in shock, he ordered the crew to shoot arrows at Daeniu. But Daeniu knocked them all away. Seeing this, he attacked Daeniu. Daeniu directly flipped over to dodge. He then jumped high into the air. There was a rule on these rivers. No fighting allowed. If you break the rules, you'll have to face his wrath. And Daeniu wanted to board the ship to escape the pursuit. Mosho wouldn't let him board easily. Big Neo jumped right back to the children's side and picked them up. He threw them directly onto the boat. Now, all he needed to do was get on the boat. He was Mosho, known as one of the drunken water ghosts. Then he began wildly chasing and striking Daeniu. While dodging, Daeniu told the leader that this was the man who took the child on the street. As both sides were still confused, Daeniu called his comrades and rushed onto the boat. But the enemy had already reacted and chased after the children. It was indeed a companion from Dainiu's childhood. Daeniu looked happy, but he had a face full of anger. Just as the boat reached the shore, the man leapt and attacked Daeniu. The sisters swept the streets according to the old man's method. Behind them were a series of circles. The sisters' cleverness greatly surprised the old man. At this moment, the large ship was getting closer to them. A figure stood at the front of the ship. The elder spoke cryptically, claiming he once had the world at his feet. The younger sister questioned why such a powerful man was still sweeping the floor. The old man said he still couldn't leave the mundane world. Then they went to sweep the streets in the city. But Daeniu shouted directly to the boatman and reported his name. Before long, a large boat appeared from the distance. Meanwhile, Dainiu's daughter was listening to the elder storyteller. The one she admired most was Bingdi. There was no other way. The enemies had no choice but to follow. But when they arrived at Sanmen Gorge, there wasn't even a trace of a boat. The leader told them to give up hope. He thought of something. He kicked up the treasured sword and placed it in front of the boy. Prepare for a fight to the death. The leader quickly stopped him. Daeniu said he would hand over the child once they boarded the boat. The adults, seeing this crazy move, immediately chose to retreat. They thought they could take a break, but more enemies surrounded them. When Daeniu heard the leader say to capture them alive, and it seems there's a formidable character, just as he is surrounded and injured by the crowd, that person also draws his sword. Daeniu sees this and braces his knee against the sword. He rammed his head into that person fiercely. Either way, it was death. Dying at his hands might be better. Just as they are about to arrive, a group of people blocks their way. But the pursuit never stopped. He could only put the child down and charge toward the enemy to take them out. If they kept moving forward, they would reach Sanmenxia. But there, someone who would kill him awaited. But they hadn't seen each other in a long time. At this moment, Daeniu and the others were under attack again. He couldn't even take care of himself. He always fought with the child on his back. For the sake of wages, he had no choice but to accept it. They have never eaten baozi. To taste the flavor, they bought two. But the boss didn't want to sell them. But nothing could stop them from eating baozi. They were once the best of partners. Everything must wait until the dust settles. The deputy shopkeeper smiles wryly. The girl in front of him is so cunning. But he will still teach them well to handle the upcoming couplets. He wanted to take them as disciples. But the sister directly refused him. They need to wait for their father's approval. Plus, the issue with their brother hasn't been resolved yet. Words alone are not enough. They launched an attack on the deputy store owner. Although it was just a simple attack, the three worked together very well. Before long, the children were out of strength. The deputy store owner became interested in them. The deputy shop owner was rendered speechless upon hearing this. He assured that he would definitely not punish them. His purpose here is to see the children's potential. Then he asked them to give their all against him. The three of them immediately took up a stance. Besides, her brothers fought back despite the risk of being attacked by a crowd. He is defending his father's dignity. He follows the teachings of his teacher. But the other party is high-ranking and powerful. If they are punished, there is nothing he can do. The younger sister thought the visitor came to punish her brother. So she expressed her opinion. She said it was wrong for her brothers to hit others, but the other side insulted their father. She asked what the teacher would do in such a situation. Daniel looked at the boy, who showed no fear. Suddenly, he remembered that he seemed to have seen him somewhere before. At Daniel's home. When the children heard the visitor was a teacher from school, they hurried out to greet him, confirmed that he's the enemy. Then, using the excuse of whispering, he dealt with the man. At this moment, the boy who had been silent spoke. Just make sure to take him back alive. If he dies, there will be big trouble. He secretly observed their actions and noticed something. When they were about to set off, he used a stomachache as an excuse to let the others go ahead. Then he discovered the mark that person had made. On the way, Daniel kept talking to that person. But strangely, there isn't a single pursuer, even though they've already been exposed. He looked at the child, as if he understood something. Then he let everyone take a break. To achieve something like this, only that person could do it. But he knew he was coming to solve the issue of sleep. It seems there's a hidden secret. Meanwhile, Daniel and his group are rushing desperately. A figure stood at the door. It was the leader of the demon cult, Quan Susu. This place was filled with corpses, unknown to whom they belonged. This is the main headquarters of the blood sect. But what needed to come would still come. He wanted to leave, citing the docking time as the reason. But when he saw the child's emaciated appearance and the scars on his body, he chose to complete the mission instead. Outside a tall tower, he could only continue the mission. For the sake of his child's education, they arrived at the mission location, and waited for the contact to arrive. Daniel only hoped the other party wouldn't show up. All the fame and fortune are just fleeting clouds. He just wants his child to grow up happily. But things did not go as he wished. After saving the captain, Dania had to take risks again. He used to be fearless, only wanting to make a name for himself. But when he had the most beautiful treasure, he found the meaning of his existence. He lives only for his child. After hearing his brothers finish speaking, he directly blames them for not hitting hard enough. The brothers are also relieved that their sister wasn't there at the time. At that moment, a voice comes in. The deputy shop owner found them. They brought the captain back to the inn, looking at his injuries. If it doesn't get stitched, the bleeding will be hard to stop. On the other side, the big cow's sister is questioning her brothers. He is worried about bringing trouble to dad. At night, the servant hurriedly arrived. He told them he had found the person from the painting. It was their captain. He was already seriously injured. At this moment, Daniel and the others arrived here. He also mentioned that they'd come here to eat if found. Upon hearing this, the waiter ran off with the drawing. Then he said they needed to rest. Daniel confirmed once again that he was from a wealthy family. After that, they prepared to take a walk around the street. He takes one look and memorizes them. After finishing the drawing, he simply raised his hand. The waiter appeared beside them. He asked the waiter to keep an eye out for the person in the drawing, and to let them know if he saw them later. Daniel asks why they need paper and ink. In no time, the waiter returns with the supplies. Then he starts drawing portraits on the paper. Daniel was quite impressed by his skill. These are all people from their team. He noticed that the other person was eating pitifully little. He confirmed once again that the other was a rich kid. After the meal, he called for the waiter. Tell him to bring the ink and brush. The waiter quickly rushes to prepare. Just gather enough for a table. Then he gave the bag of gold to the waiter. Dania confirmed that he was a child from a wealthy family. Before long, a table full of dishes was served. While Dania was eating like crazy, it seemed he was a wealthy family's child. But why would someone so rich work as a bodyguard? The waiter reminded them there were private rooms upstairs. He tossed a few silver taels over. Then he asked the waiter to bring the food. Then he pulled something out and handed it to the big bull. The big bull was completely caught off guard. The two of them then entered the inn. His companion went straight upstairs to choose a private room. Daniel saw how natural he acted. But how many can be as brave as Lord Guan? The big bull can only do his best. Yesterday, the big bull and his companion arrived in the county town. But he didn't bring any money. Upon hearing this, his companion started to search in front of him. If there is potential for development, even if he offends the Zhirong Hall, he will still take the child away. The ancient saying goes, the second Master Gu treats injuries by scraping bones. Now there's a big bull tied up for treatment. Yet they were relentless. I need an explanation. The head of the junior class proposed that the child be publicly humiliated once. After discussion among the masters, they decided on this. The deputy owner inquired about the child's background. He was very happy. The martial arts school finally has some good prospects. The fight among a few children surprisingly caused such a big stir. He reprimanded many of the sect leaders, blaming them for their children's lack of skill. At this moment, someone asked what had happened. He was referred to as the left fist and right gun. Seeing this, everyone paid their respects to him. He also has another identity as the deputy owner of the Heavenly Dragon Hall. After learning about the situation, Fortunately, the younger brother stopped him in time. The two were afraid of getting scolded. They quickly left the place. This incident soon attracted a lot of dissatisfaction. The leaders of various sects came to demand an explanation. The younger brother wanted to help, but he was scolded by his older brother. He quickly dealt with them. Suddenly, he felt a surge of impulse. He wanted to resolve these people right here. One person rushed in first. Another directly charged at the brother. Yet he didn't move an inch. Then he exerted force and directly knocked him down. More kids surrounded him. They started to insult their father. The brother could no longer endure it. He jumped up and kicked. He directly threw the leader away. Seeing this, everyone wanted to teach them a lesson. But their father's identity drew ridicule from everyone. The younger brother was very angry when he heard this. But the older brother stopped him and told him to ignore those people. But the other side escalated things. The lines of muscle on his body caught his companion's attention. Daniel saw him get up and urged him to get on the road. They needed to reach the county town as soon as possible. Meanwhile, the children were working hard on their training. Finally, they emerged from the mountains. Although discovered by hidden enemies, it did not raise their suspicion. The next morning, Daniel had already begun his training. Then they take off their uniforms and disguise themselves as woodcutters. They traverse through the dense forest. During breaks, Daniel continued learning characters with the other party. They walked for a long time like this. Two identical boys. Their martial arts finally have successors. At this moment, Daniel was breaking through the encirclement. After shaking off the pursuing enemies, they arrived by a riverside. Everyone was shocked. They didn't expect him to step forward voluntarily. They had been hiding here for 20 years. Every day, doing nothing but sweeping. Today, they finally waited for the treasure. He was eager to see what they would achieve. But at that moment, Daniel and the others were attacked. Only the two of them were left in the whole team. Daniel told his companion to stay close. Then he charged at the enemy. Upon hearing that, they started practicing the Great Bull Fist technique. Everyone was stunned. Isn't this just the most basic of basics? Meanwhile, someone in the distance was drawn to them. He recognized the children's potential, and they were taken to their respective classes. Everyone was discussing. They all knew their father was just a grade A gatekeeper. After the three introduced themselves to the crowd, the teacher asked them to demonstrate what they've learned. Thinking someone was following them, he looked towards the team leader. He didn't know if he noticed. Meanwhile, his children had also arrived at the martial arts school. They were welcomed by senior students. So he helped him carry the heavy load, and told him to exercise more. At night, during rest, Daniel stood guard in the distance. He felt uneasy. After confirming the benefits with the captain again, he went with the others on the mission. But he had to follow orders from a young captain. Looking at someone with no experience in tasks, he saw a person next to him drenched in sweat. Daniel promised his daughter that when he returned, he would definitely recognize the signature. The next day, he arrived at the meeting point, but there were a lot of people gathered here. Originally, it was supposed to be only him. The next day, they resumed training as usual. Daniel told them he'd be away on a business trip for 6 months. The daughter suddenly hugged him. She thought he was pitiful. To be working hard for money without even knowing how to write. Daniel then thought about what the old man said, not wanting to create a rift with his child. So he agreed to let them go to the martial arts school, but they must learn to sign their names within a year. The children were all happy to hear this. The daughter even promised to become skilled in both literature and martial arts. After hearing this, Daniel agreed with the old man, but doubted the truth of the story. The old man had once considered taking Daniel's daughter as a disciple. Daniel mocked the old man for teaching his daughter to sweep the floor. But the old man said sweeping could cultivate one's character. The family scrimped and saved to support his studies in management. But he didn't like that kind of life. This also became a gap between him and his family. Later, he switched from literature to martial arts, defeated the demon sect leader. At that moment, an old man approached him. They often eat together. He advised Dania not to be so conflicted. Children should choose what they like to learn. He was also the hope of the family since childhood. If chosen, one can quickly rise to a higher position. However, Daniel doesn't want his child to go there. He wants his child to pursue academics, but the children prefer martial arts. This dilemma has been troubling him. They will definitely consider their child's future. This is a world where strength is respected. To achieve something, one must practice martial arts diligently. The Tianlong Martial Arts School is the highest institution of the Tianlong Association. The 5 major leaders of the association come here regularly to select candidates. Even extra rewards cannot sway him. The captain has no choice. He can only mention the leaders' conditions, which is that their child can enter the Tianlong Martial Arts School. As a parent, this makes him feel troubled. One day, the captain approached him again, hoping he would bring a child back. It would take about half a year round trip. He directly refused after hearing this. As children grow, they face the issue of schooling. He does not want his daughter to go to a martial arts school. He wants his daughter to learn literature, and then grow up to find a good family. But his daughter opposes him. The children also kept their promises. Even when they were exhausted, they did not give up, and his body fully recovered. Unknowingly, the children grew up again. They didn't fight back. They were afraid that the children's father would bully Dainyu. Upon hearing this, Dainyu says that he won't be bullied. Then he thinks he should teach them some self-defense techniques. But one cannot give up just because they are tired. And so, a long time passed again. Dainyu knows that his body is recovering. But this time, the recovery is unusually long. When he returns home, he sees that his two sons are injured. After asking, he learns that they had a conflict with other children. Heavy snow started falling outside. He and the children began building snowmen. Because they played for too long, they all caught a cold. Dainyu had never been sick before. He headed straight into the depths of the mountains. He frantically unleashed his energy towards the mountain. This feeling drove him insane. He jumped up and slammed heavily onto the mountain. Time passed by like this. Several dents appeared on his body. Surprisingly, he became weaker after being hit. That day, he had just put the child to sleep. Suddenly, he felt an abnormal heat in his body. He rushed out of the house. He had already become the new leader of the demon cult. He appointed the deputy to take on the leader's position. He was going to eliminate the bloodshed he despised the most. At that moment, Dainyu discovered that his body was undergoing a change. The proud ability to withstand blows had actually vanished. He thought returning to the world would bring glory again, but he never imagined he'd end up going to that place. After he finished explaining to his granddaughter about the afterlife, he transformed into specks of light and disappeared from the spot. When Susu walked out the door, the Lord watches over everything. He wants to fulfill his old friend's wish, to prevent Dainyu from entering the martial world. After more than 2 months, Dainyu saw their child again. He asked what "do not disturb the martial arts world" meant. Only then did Dainyu understand the meaning of the words. Then the leader organized the team. They prepared to return to the association. In the heavens, at this moment, the sound of horse hooves came from afar. It turns out to be the leader of the Heavenly Dragon Association. After seeing Dainyu, he gave him a big hug. He was very worried about Dainyu's safety. At this time, the leader also noticed the words on the ground. Each hit targeted pressure points. Dainyu opened his eyes again. He was now the only one left here. For large characters were written at his feet, but he didn't know what they meant. Susu doesn't want to drag this out any longer. She directly launches a skill attack. Dainyu quickly defends, but was instantly defeated. Received several hits. Dainyu grabs the wrist. In an instant, he performs a shoulder throw. He prepares to pin Susu down, but he is stopped by a single finger. Then he is thrown out directly. He told her to unblock Dainyu's meridians. Then Susu quickly charged at Dainyu. Dainyu switched from fist to elbow. In his moment of shock, Susu was already in front of him. Susu provocatively told Dainyu that if he wanted to know if he had the strength to enter the martial world, he would find out after sparring with her. Hearing this, Dainyu was instantly enraged. He stepped forward and took a fighting stance. At that moment, the leader sent a message to his granddaughter. Then he introduced these people as Ronin to Dainyu. He then asked his granddaughter, Susu, to come over and spar with them. However, Dainyu expressed that he didn't want to spar with a woman. But when their eyes met, Dainyu was so frightened that he kept retreating. "Didn't your master tell you never to step into the martial world?" The next day, he took Dainyu to meet someone. It was his granddaughter. The leader conveyed the message to everyone. Don't reveal your identity. Yang Dingtian thought to himself that his old friend never wanted his disciple to enter the martial world, so he decided to tell a kind lie. I'm just an inconspicuous figure in the martial world, but once you reach my level, you can easily take a life. As expected, it turned out to be Lao Yumo Wei. Wasn't he the one who swore back then to keep his disciple away from the conflicts of the martial world? At night, the girl fell into a deep sleep. Linghu asked the old man how many experts like him were there in the martial world. Looking at them in confusion, "Can someone tell me, what is going on here?" Then the misunderstanding was cleared up. Yang Dingtian asked who his master was. Just as Yang Dingtian was about to continue beating up Linghu, the startled little girl grabbed his sleeve and pleaded with him not to hurt the old man. Hearing the little girl affectionately call the elder grandpa, Linghu was stunned in place. "Then I'll help him finish it." Linghu barely managed to block the strike, but Yang Dingtian grabbed him. In an instant, dozens of palm strikes landed on his body. This made Linghu briefly wonder if his end was near. Linghu was shaken by his powerful aura, but how could he give up so easily? After a brief exchange, Yang Dingtian realized that the young man's skills were only mediocre. Could it be that my old friend didn't complete this technique because of me? But when he looked carefully, he realized that the young man was practicing his old friend's 1000 refining technique. So he asked the young man how far he'd come. But Linghu, in his fury, had no patience for idle chatter. Bakir immediately attacked the elder. The old man grinned and said he'd sent them all away. Hearing this, Linghu was instantly enraged. His body surged with intense murderous intent. Yang Dingtian wondered if he had misunderstood him. He finally found some clues. Upon closer inspection, he found one of the missing little girls. The person who abducted her was an old man with white hair. Linghu appeared and asked where the other children were, but thinking of the child who came for help, he couldn't bear it. Even if it means facing fire and brimstone, he must go and see. After several days of pursuit, no longer advancing further, Linghu resolutely continues to investigate this matter alone. At this moment, Linghu also does not understand why he is doing this. For the sake of the 3 children, he shouldn't take risks alone. A figure slowly appears. The newcomer turns out to be Yang Dingtian, the leader of the demon sect. Meanwhile, Linghu is in a dispute with the bearded man. In the end, the bearded man leads his team back to the city. Everyone's face was filled with panic. It was as if they had encountered something extremely terrifying. Just then, a cultist was suddenly grabbed by a ghostly figure and lifted into the air. With a loud bang. On the other side, Linghu and his team have already tracked down the blood sect's location. They aimed to rescue the kidnapped children. They rushed in. As a result, there were already corpses of the red-clad cultists lying everywhere. 800 miles away, a group of red-clad cultists was making a long-distance dash. The first thing he did upon returning to Bright Summit was to cleanse the sect's ranks. Because the blood sect has resurfaced, he decided to lead the righteous sect back into the martial world. The martial world has become too peaceful now. He must stir up the storm once again. He has finally decided to leave seclusion. He spread his hands wide, and could shake the heavens and the earth. With a single stretch of his hand, he could split mountains and rivers. This man is Yang Dingtian, the leader of the demon sect. The man had been meditating on the mountaintop for a full 10 years. Even doing his business was a solution. Time flows like a painting. It has turned his entire being white. Now that his skills are perfected. Upon hearing the news, the old master quickly deployed all his men. The visitors have ill intent. Those with good intent would not come. This matter must not be taken lightly. So he even sent out the entire Dragon Guard clan. By the time he arrived, all the adults in the courtyard had been poisoned, and all the children had disappeared. Then the bearded man reported the matter to Tianlong City. He already sent Linghu to investigate the matter with a team. The noise made Linghu run outside to check the situation. It turned out that the child who had just hidden came to ask for help. Shaking with fear, he pointed in the direction of the nails. After calling for the wet nurse, Linghu went to investigate alone. They broke into the courtyard and abducted all the children inside. Only one child hiding in a jar managed to escape. At that moment, Linghu had just put the 3 little ones to sleep. When a commotion was heard outside, they accepted the orders and left. 10 minutes past nightfall. 2 guards in the courtyard were still joking around, unaware that danger was silently approaching. After dealing with the guards, they seemed to have long gotten used to this. Then, the subordinate reported the task failure with great trepidation. Only a top-level warrior token from Tianlong City was found at the scene. They were to find his master and bring him back at any cost. Everyone was filled with apprehension. He respectfully knelt before her. Then he rose and walked behind the woman, slowly wrapping a red cord around her neck. Such an evil scene, but it drove everyone even crazier. And so, the family joyfully began to make a fuss together. Deep within the remote mountains, dozens of blood cult followers dressed in red robes gathered on the high platform. A woman was gracefully dancing among them. The grand priest of the blood cult slowly emerged. He also specifically instructed to give more rewards to Linghu. He needed to get this kid involved as well. At this moment, Linghu was completely unaware and healing at home. This battle really had injured him. Soon, 3 little ones burst in, clamoring for a bath. However, once the blood cult emerges, the demonic cult will seek refuge. If the leader of the demonic cult has truly returned, the martial arts world is bound to fall into chaos again. So he ordered people to continue investigating this matter. After that, he reported the matter to the old master of Tianlong City. The old master promised him that a thorough investigation would be conducted. A few days later, the old master learned that the mastermind was the blood cult. If it were just them, it would be one thing. Why do I have to take care of all these people? Maybe I should just kick them out. But looking at the happy children, he softened again. Helpless, he could only work harder to earn more money. This action drew many enemies to attack together. In the end, the man single-handedly eliminated them all. He rescued more than a dozen women and children. However, the next day he regretted it. Why? The man watching was filled with anger and shock. He was deeply saddened and indignant. Taking advantage of the moonlight, the man decisively took action. With one punch after another, he dealt with each of the bandits, but ultimately he couldn't resist the pangs of his conscience. However, what he encountered when he arrived was so shocking. Before him lay a mass of bodies sprawled on the ground. In the distance, fierce-looking bandits were not only robbing children, they don't even spare the old, the weak, the women, and the children. The more likely it is to happen. In the dead of night, a man is running wildly in the rain. At that moment, a cry for help comes through. The man initially wanted to ignore it and just go home, because recently, children have often gone missing outside the city. This bad news made Linghu feel uneasy, but no matter what, he was determined to protect the three little ones. However, the more you fear something, as he wished, he had more time to be with his children. However, the three little ones were always thinking about martial arts. This really worried him. Things often happen at just the right time. The wet nurse came back and said she didn't dare take the children outside. This made the enemies Linghu encountered even stronger. More importantly, he had less time to spend with his children, so he decided to deliberately lose once. Even so, the bearded man didn't blame him. He then took the treasure box from the teary-eyed village chief. Although he was quite dissatisfied with the mission, at least the reward was decent. Later, Tianlong City gave him more and more missions, testing the limits of his combat ability. Just take them all down. Linghu felt like he had been tricked, but he wouldn't just sit and wait for death. After a fierce battle, all these burly men lay on the ground groaning. Illiterate, he handed the instructions to the village chief. Before coming, they said this mission was just to deliver a simple order, and conveniently bring back a box. However, the enraged village chief made him realize that this matter is not that simple. Take the things away. However, an ordinary life was a luxury for Linghu. That day, the bearded man assigned him a new task. To earn some silver, he had no choice but to tough it out. The target of this mission is the village chief of Immortal Village. He only hopes the children stay away from the conflicts of the martial world. Peace and joy. Afterward, Linghu enjoyed several months of quiet life. The three little ones have grown quite a bit. Roasting a chicken would be enough to make them overjoyed. The Linghu family is warm and harmonious. Today is the triplets drawing ceremony. The three little ones scan the items on the table one by one. In the end, they surprisingly rush toward their father's dagger. This scene worries the old father to no end. The branch leader hadn't even had time to report the incident. A mysterious force suddenly arrived. Without a word, they slaughtered them all. Even this outpost has been completely burned down. In contrast, in the end, the man knocked them all to the ground with just a few punches and kicks. Then he hummed a tune and casually headed home. However, these masked men were not ordinary thugs. They were members of the infamous Assassin's Guild. They came after him because their last mission failed due to his interference. How could his life remain peaceful after this? In the dead of night, a man walked alone on a mountain path. Suddenly, a group of masked men in white cloth appeared. Without a word, they launched a coordinated attack on the man. That there is no internal power in his meridians. Although his maternal grandfather is indeed quite impressive. It seems I should be more cautious of him in the future. Linghu, who had always desired an ordinary life, didn't realize that this unexpected event had drawn the attention of the Dragon Guardians to him. At this moment, the team leader is also contemplating this matter. These assassins this time are all top-notch skilled fighters. Could it be that this Linghu is an even stronger cinematic expert than I am? But I have detected. I heard the assassins who came this time were all experts. Linghu disdainfully said they were nothing but a bunch of nobody experts. He could easily defeat them just the same. Another person interrupted, saying that you really made us proud this time. Now those noble young masters can no longer act all high and mighty. In the previous encounters, he found the opponent's strength to be average. So he went off alone to deal with the remaining enemies. At this moment, everyone set off on their way back. On the way, a colleague curiously asked how Linghu defeated them. Linghu briefly explained. For the past few days, they had mainly been hiding in the mountains and forests. If there was an opportunity, they would kill the pursuing enemies. But their numbers were simply too many. So, Linghu found a cliff to place the little girl safely. Someone burst into the meeting, shouting, "Mrs. Back." The news was like a bolt from the blue, startling everyone as they rushed out. It turns out that the injured Linghu was carrying the young lady back. The sect leader hurriedly asked what had happened in the past few days. A group of assassins was relentlessly chasing from behind. Several days later, the Dao Dao sect held multiple meetings to discuss, but there was no news at all. Just as everyone was frowning, unsure of what to do, toe to sword tip. When they clashed, the iron sword shattered to pieces. Linghu followed up with a kick, sending the assassin flying. Holding the little girl, he ran deep into the forest. A few leaps later, they disappeared into the woods, to launch an attack on Linghu. However, he kicked them down with one foot. At this moment, the little girl was trembling in his arms. This greatly triggered Linghu's protective instincts. He leaped into the air, Seeing the wall ahead blocking his way, he actually broke through the wall. Unexpectedly, several assassins jumped over the wall and reached him first. They drew their blades and assumed combat stances. Then, the two leaped up together. He had no choice but to take action now. He let out a powerful lion's roar that echoed through the mountains, causing a group of assassins to freeze in place. Then he quickly picked up the little girl and turned to run. Several assassins relentlessly pursued him. The little girl obediently followed. Linghu screamed inside, "Don't come over. Isn't it better to go where there are more people?" However, how could he really stand by and do nothing? Even if he was reluctant to get involved in the conflicts of the martial world. Just as they were about to succeed, a dark figure suddenly leaped out. With a single blow, it killed 3 assassins. This action caused a large group of assassins to attack him. The dark figure told the little girl to run to the man. Each one was ready to capture them all. Now someone was preparing to abduct all the children right in front of him. His first thought was to quickly distance himself from this conflict. At this moment, numerous assassins joined forces. Their target was the little girl. One of the children examined his sign closely. Duna's lips said he was just a mercenary, so the group of mischievous kids left in disappointment. Just as they reached the wall, suddenly, without warning, a dozen masked men jumped out. The leader of the Dao Dao sect exchanges pleasantries with each other. They invite each other to take a seat. The man gets to enjoy another hearty meal. Afterward, they head to the back garden to patrol and relax. A group of children rushes over upon seeing the warriors from Tianlong City. This mission involved escorting several young nobles to a banquet. However, these young nobles look down on the city guards. The man at the forefront admonishes everyone to watch their words. He then leads the group to move quietly. After a short while, they arrive at their destination. But the offer was just too good. So the man decided that this task was meant for him. He went home to visit the baby, and gave a few instructions to the nurse. Then the man prepared to go out on the mission. One day, a big bearded man approached him, and gave him an urgent escort mission. The man hurriedly refused, and stated that he was born to be a subject. Moreover, it's my own vacation time now. What he wanted now was a safe, high-paying job. Working for several days. The man enjoys it. He thinks this is the best job in the world. Such a high-level classification was only arranged for him to be a city guard soldier. The bearded man also knew this was a waste of talent. He hurriedly explained. Little did he expect that the man was unusually excited to hear this news. Diligent and frugal. Most importantly, she was very patient in taking care of children. With her help, the man could now work away from home with peace of mind. After assessment, the Heavenly Dragon City assigned him the rank of A-class warrior. The next morning, many people came to apply for the position of a wet nurse. After multiple rounds of selection, he finally chose a middle-aged woman. She was resourceful and thoughtful. As night falls, the autumn wind blows. A man, new to fatherhood, fumbles around with the baby. This makes him feel both pained and joyful. But as soon as he sees the baby's innocent and pure smile, he feels that everything is worth it. Even his school and lineage are unclear. It's hard to imagine what kind of master could have taught such a prodigious disciple. Therefore, Zhulong felt he had found a treasure. He would definitely make good use of this piece sent by heaven. Jade steps are covered in white dew. The old man pondered for a moment. He recalled the heartbreak from earlier in the day. That guy's martial skills are aggressive, exceptional, yet he himself is unaware of it. The man also passed the test of Heavenly Dragon City. Moreover, Heavenly Dragon City agreed to all his conditions. The white-haired old man is the strategist of Heavenly Dragon City. In the martial world, he is known as Long Shuxia. I don't understand why the strategist values this young man so highly. The arranged position must pay well, regardless of the amount. It would be even better to have a wet nurse if we lived close to home. The proctor was stunned for half a stick of incense. Then he ordered someone to throw him out of the sword gate. But there's always a way out. After passing the 3 tests, he could join the sword and blade sect. However, as soon as the man stepped into the sword and blade sect, he did something that shocked the entire sect. Later, when registering in the roster, he made his request, just to make the mark a bit deeper. Then the man raised his blade. With a gentle swing, he split the curtain in 2. This move left the referee stunned. Only after being reminded by the man did he come to his senses, passing 3 tests. Steadily stopped across from it. Not only the audience, even the referee was stunned. The third challenge was to leave a mark on the century-old iron curtain. Everyone was slashing back and forth. The second trial was to jump over a pit filled with blades. This tested not only agility, but even more importantly, courage. The man pondered for a moment, then jumped over without hesitation. Only 1 in 100 could succeed. Naturally, the frail man was not taken seriously. However, he simply hugged the giant rock with both hands. With a gentle lift, he raised the rock above his head. This scene left the onlookers stunned. Just when the man was at a loss, the shopkeeper pointed him to a path. One of the 4 major sects of the martial arts world, the sword and blade sect, was recruiting talents. However, joining the sword and blade sect required passing 3 major tests. The first test was to lift a boulder half the height of a person. But in the long run, this was far from sufficient. So before dawn, he went out to find a job. But the result was constant setbacks. The man, holding the 3 children, wept uncontrollably. He knelt by his wife's bed and vowed to raise their child to adulthood. Then he buried his wife while holding back his sorrow. Returning home, he took out the silver his wife had entrusted to him on her deathbed. This was enough for him and the babies to live on for a few years. Afterward, the wife exhausted all her strength to give birth to 2 boys and a girl. The man, who had never cried, stared blankly at them. He held back his tears to avoid worrying his wife, but the pain in his heart caused him to cry uncontrollably. In the end, the wife passed away in tears. The doctor asks him to choose, save the mother, or save the child. The man, in pain, decides to save the mother. However, the wife, dragging her weary body out, strongly opposed. The only argument ended with the man losing. His wife is pregnant. He is about to become a father. At this moment, he feels like the happiest person in the world. However, fate is rarely so kind. His wife is facing complications during childbirth. This makes the man feel very guilty. Unexpectedly, his wife bowed deeply to him, feeling pain for him and thanking him for everything he has given to this family. Such a kind wife gives the man infinite strength. A long-lasting positive attitude brings good things in succession. The man knows she is his greatest fortune in this life, so he secretly vows to ensure she lives a happy life. Snow and wind on the escort route. The night watchman of solitude. Such hard work only earns a few fragmented shadows. The 2 locked eyes and decided on a lifetime together. She carries herself with grace, and speaks elegantly. This captivates the man, leaving him unable to extricate himself. Soon after, the 2 naturally became husband and wife. A small shrimp entering the world soon encountered powerful enemies. Feeling disheartened, he began a life of decline. Perhaps it was heaven's favor. He met his destined other half in the vast sea of people. Before his death, his father repeatedly warned him never to step into the martial arts world. But in the end, he still got married, because he believed he could achieve great fame. However, there are always people stronger than you. And there are skies beyond the skies. He even compressed his sleeping time to just 2 hours. Later, his father passed away. He gradually became well known in this area. Thus, he speculated that his father must have been a master in the film industry. That's why he wasn't a match for him. This old man is just an unknown figure in the martial arts world. His father tells him, with these skills, you can make a living. However, the man was not content with this, so he tripled his training time. A man must practice single-handed handstands for 3 hours every day. He runs back and forth along the mountain path for 800 miles. He wields twin flower staffs to split open 3,000 boulders. Such harsh training is because he wants to become the best in the world. In the end, he can't even defeat his frail old father.